Good evening, Eddie here from the Balrogs and Baggins' channel. This video is about advanced foraging in MYFAROG. Basically just some home brew rules to the game, which if you like you might be able to add to some of your sessions, just to give them a bit more depth when it comes to foraging. So in the local campaign, which I've been running with some friends for the past 3 months, basically they lost their village. It was destroyed by a fire Etin. So one of they decided in the end to build their own village. They fell out with the making, kind of blamed him for what had happened. So they up sticked and left and found a nice part of Thule, a couple of hours away from the village, to construct their own village bit by bits. Obviously finding resources such as wood and stone, etc. Of course, then foraging is something that you have to do on a daily basis, often, or at least as often as possible, as well as hunting. And so that is such a regular skill that they perform. I just wanted to add a little bit more variety to what they found. So not just the same thing over and over again, whether that's fish or the same old berry. So I decided to create some of these tables here, which you'll see in a second, based on the seasons of the year. So obviously spring, summer, autumn and winter, and there might also be some crossover seasons as well. So yeah, let's have a look at these tables now. I'm sure you've had enough time to read this introductory text here. So let's see. So here we have these. So we've got spring and summer. This works on a D20, so down from 1 to 20 on all of these tables. As you can see here, in spring and summer, plenty of vegetables, fruit, mushrooms that you can find. Obviously quite very fair months of the year, I should say. A lot of the things you can find from these tables are all based more or less on a temperate northern European climate, which is what Thule is based upon. Now, also there are certain types of fruits, such as limes and oranges, which you might be thinking, well, do they really grow in as far up as Norway? Well, the answer is no, they don't. But obviously Thule is a little bit different to that. It's a mythical setting after all, and of course a different age as well. So it's not not modern age, let's say, completely different age. So of course the temperature might permit that. The other thing to take into consideration is that the lime and the orange tree are sacred trees to certain deities, sympathetic deities, I should say, in Thule. And I've also included things like yew arrows. Of course, the yew tree is a sacred tree to many deities. And if you know anything about the yew tree and the arrows, well, basically the arrow is the only part which you can consume, and you should never chew on the stony part of the yew arrow or swallow it. If you ever do go foraging and find a yew tree, I can tell you that the yew arrows are quite delicious indeed. But yeah, some caution to be had. So here you can see some of the food you can forage in spring here, all going down here, and in summer. So you notice the cutoff point here is about 13 on the dice, and then from 14 to 19 we have fish, because fishing is also a big part of foraging. There are many streams and rivers in Thule, and your characters are assumed to have grown up learning these techniques, how to fish, of course. So the likelihood is that they will find fish quite often. But just for fun and for role-playing purposes, just to add a bit more depth, you can use these charts and just a bit more variety, even when it comes to cooking. Yeah, those kind of things. Number 20 here, we have the remains of a large game animal. That's something which features on the 4 seasonal tables. Okay, so in summer is generally the month of berries. As you can see here, we've got a wide range of berries here. Plums and apricots, new arrows, groundnuts, beetroot, lemon balm, wood sorrel. We even have corn. Corn is, obviously it's more of a agricultural crop, but yeah, you might come across some wild corn, let's say. Of course, foraging you can do in more, saying communities in MYFAROG, but that would be stealing, of course. So a lot of this is based on finding wild things in the wild. Okay, so let's go down to autumn and winter. You can see straight away here in winter there are far fewer things which you can forage and find in winter. Obviously, in fact, you get a -3 to foraging in winter to reflect that. It's much harder, colder temperatures, the weather's a lot worse, and it's basically the season of death. So it's it's much harder to find things, but still not impossible, depending on how good you are or your player character and where you are exactly. Again, autumn, different types of things you can find. Again, lots of nuts here, and from 3 to 6. Blackberries and brambles, very, very common fruit all over northern Europe, as well as like sloes, elderberries, rose hips. Again, we have yew arrows, types of mushroom and fungi such as giant puffballs. Chicken of the woods, it's quite an interesting one, which you can find often growing on the sides of trees such as oak trees. Apples, of course, apples are a very autumnal fruit, at least here in Europe. Olives, again, the olive tree is a sacred tree to some of the deities. So it makes sense that you'll be able to forage some olives. Again, it's worth noting that all of these are renewable resources. Okay, so you're not going to extinguish what you find. They will grow back if done properly. Again, we have fish and the remains of a large game animal. Going over to winter now, much more sparse. Conifer needles, juniper berries, acorns, the ones which the squirrels missed or left behind. Rose hips, hawthorns, cranberries, winter green tea berries, and again fish and remains of a large game animal. Okay, let's go over to the notes here. So the first one is about finding a large game animal. You might want to change that to a medium game animal. I probably wouldn't do it with a small one because it's very unlikely that there's going to be anything left at all to salvage. So for the purpose of this, I'm using a large game animal where there's often a lot more meat and certain predators, they will not eat all of the what's provided on the animal. Say if it's wolves, then they will generally obviously take away organs such as the heart, the liver, the kidneys, etc. Taken of course more by the alpha pair of the pack. But there's a very good chance that there will be meat left. Perhaps they got scared. So yeah, let's see. When the remains of a large game animal are found, cast 3d6 plus 5, and divide that by the weight of the animal to see how many pounds of meat are left. Then cast a d20. On a 1 to 14, the large game animal was killed by a predatory animal, and on a 15 to 20, it was killed by humans. Roll on the relevant tables in the MYFAROG rulebook to see what type of predatory animal or human, until it makes sense given the context. So, let's say it's a human. It's pretty unlikely that a commission merchant is going to stop to hunt an elk, for example. It might happen, but let's say for the sake of this it's unlikely, so you could just roll that again, and maybe, until you get perhaps a peasant or a hunter, or just a group of, perhaps even outlaws, bandits, etc. Of course, with the animals, if you get a 20, which is a cursed tree, just re-roll that. And any non-predatory animal, just re-roll. Okay, so players can test for advanced tracking if they wish, and if they identify the tracks, the type, number, age, and then even choose to follow them. So you might have somebody in the party who's particularly good at tracking, and they might be able to tell the rest of the group, well, what's killed this large game animal was, say, 3 smilodons, so it might not be a good idea to go and track them down, unless you really want to. Okay, conifer needles. They make a good tea, except for yew ones, which are very toxic. In fact, pretty much all of the yew tree is toxic. Of course, the arrows can be eaten, and they are quite delicious indeed. But you should never swallow or chew on the hard, the stony pip part. Hawthorn seeds are also poisonous. The leaves of wintergreen tea berries make a good tea, hence the name tea berry, as can plenty of other things in the wild. Perhaps offering some tea to a stranger by a camp in the wild might help talks run better. A malevolent character might even try to poison it. So, that could happen. The Mythmaster can choose to add herbs and plants to any successful foraging attempts. Perhaps the players find lemongrass, nettles, etc. Just use your imagination. So, you could also give your players the option to roll multiple times. If they find 3 rations, then, well, if you want, just roll 3 times so that they can find different things. Many types of fish and meat can be cured and salted to last much longer than normal. That's something you'd want to keep in mind for the winter months. Food can be made to last longer using methods such as canning, preserving, drying, curing, etc. If a player character finds more than 1 ration, well, I just basically said that before, so ignore me. Yeah, example, a player in summer finds 2 rations of food, a ration of fish, and 1 of mulberries, providing you with quite a nice dinner that night. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and feel free to use these tables in your MYFAROG sessions and campaigns, just to add a bit more variety and depth. And also feel free to modify and change anything as you see fit. So until next time, bye bye.